and turn it over to her. We are delighted to have today Virginia Zemp. She is the Executive Director of Historic Camden Foundation. Prior returning to her family home in Camden to assume the leadership of the foundation, she was Development Director at the South Carolina Historical Society at the Fireproof Building. She's a graduate of Ashley Hall School in the College of Charleston here in Charleston, and she is also a member of the Colonial Dames in South Carolina. We'd like to thank her for her sharing her time and expertise to tell us about Historic Charleston Foundation. Historic Camden Foundation. I had HCF written down, so I'm so sorry. Historic Camden Foundation. My apologies. So, on that note,
thank you. Well, thank you, Tina and Alan and all of y'all. In fact, before I get started, I really appreciate y'all, Colonial Dames, highlighting Camden's history today. And I, even though I might not be allowed to do this, I would love to see faces if you don't like to put your picture up. But I know so many of these names and I miss you all so much. And being able to at least see you for a second is such a joy to me. And I'm delighted you're all here, so thank you so much. Please let me thank also this whole series that the Colonial Dames is putting together. It's a wonderful educational opportunity for all of us in the history world under these circumstances where we are having a hard time producing revenue when we're based on tourism dollars. So we really appreciate this educational opportunity. And I'm thrilled to see someone maybe using it for an educational opportunity down here with Teresa. So for those of you who don't know where Camden, South Carolina is located, we are just northeast of the state capital of Columbia, off Highway 20 towards Florence, South Carolina. The area has a rich history because of the river systems that meet in the area and being just below the fall lines, allowing for water navigation from the low country. The area was a thoroughfare for the indigenous tribes, became a pathway along the Great Wagon Road, and was integral in the British Southern Campaign of the American Revolution. I want to let you know today how South Carolina, Kershaw County, and the city of Camden and Historic Camden are working together to meet an opportunity afforded all of us in this room, basically, or in this Zoom room, with the nation's 250th anniversary of the American Revolution in 2026. So I've put together, and it's on our Facebook, we're going to show a portion of a video that kind of gives you more details about the region that we are in. Oh, love you. So thank y'all. It's about a 6-minute video, and then I'll come back. And we're going to do a short little talk and then lots of questions. Okay? See you in a minute.
My name is Bob Giangiorgi. I'm on the Historic Camden board and also a volunteer at Historic Camden. Today I want to talk about early Camden and trade and transportation. Much of this material we use when we do the third grader tours throughout the year. And it's always interesting to see how much information you probably learned at one time and forgot. So maybe this will act to stimulate a little bit of what you learned earlier. When we talk with the students, I typically try to get them thinking about time and place. So with time, we're talking about a period approximately 300 years ago. So that puts you in the 1720 time frame, early colonial period for Camden. And the Camden area at that time had settlers, but the major settlement had really not taken place yet. But you do have plenty of history in the Camden area prior to that. Earliest recorded history of the Camden area is when DeSoto visited in 1540. And at that time, he visited with the Cofetaceci. DeSoto was on his mission to find gold in the colonies. He did not find anything with any gold with the Confetti but did take a large amount of river pearls from them. DeSoto left the area, traveled somewhat through South Carolina, then went back south. Eventually, he died of disease, ironically, in 1542. Following DeSoto, you had many, many settlers that came through, many people that were exploring. In addition to DeSoto, you had John Lawson, who was English, and he came through 1701. The Carolinas are interesting in that originally the charter was issued in 1629 and included what was called the province of Carolina. And as you look at this map, you can see that the province of Carolina the northern part ran along the Virginia border, southern part, northern part of Florida. The province of Carolina included that land from sea to sea. So from Atlantic Ocean to Pacific Ocean. That was given to Sir Robert Heath. He did not do anything with it. Charles II then took that charter and gave it to 8 of his supporters in 1665. So the Carolinas were really looked at as a major potential area for development, but in reality, very little was done. You finally started to get settlers coming in from the Charleston area. Charleston was settled in 1670. You had the settlers moving in from Charleston inland. They were mainly English and mainly planters. You had also quite a bit of movement of settlers coming from the north, from the Philadelphia area. They tended to settle the upstate. So those were our frontier families. The key event that really solidified Camden was in 1730, the Crown identified 11 or 12 towns, inland cities, that were to be established as quickly as possible. The Crown was into the colonies primarily for trade. They wanted the economic benefit of the trade. And also, those towns were to provide protection. There were quite a few wars with Native Americans, and it really offered protection for the Crown. So Camden was established in 1733 and is the oldest inland city in South Carolina. Now, the place we talk about, and it is important as we talk about trade. Here you have the 6 different landforms in South Carolina. Camden sits right here between the Sandhills and the Piedmont. Okay, why is that important? Well, what you have is what's called the fall line. And the fall line, as you can see, you have all along the East Coast. And the fall line means a change in elevation. So if you think of rivers coming to the ocean, it's usually a drop off into a flatter area. So in terms of navigation, ships could easily come upriver to the fall line. And consequently, Camden became a trade center. It was easy for goods to move up the river, the Wateree River, to Camden, as well as the interior people could move their goods to Camden for movement back down. But I remind you, Camden did not have a water connection to Charleston. We were on the Wateree, it connected to the Santee. The Santee emptied into the ocean north of Charleston. But Camden was connected by roads to Charleston.
So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of the strategic advantage to this space, which has been important to both the indigenous tribes, the settlers, and then, as our space shows, it was also very important to the British when they settled and started the Southern Campaign, making this area the headquarters, one of their forward operating bases during the Southern Campaign, taking over the house that I sit in now, which is actually a reproduction of the original house. But that our site here, it's 100 acres, and it is a National Park Service affiliate site in which we interpret both the colonial and early trade that settled the area. We have some Native American artifacts. We do a lot of archaeology on this space, and then we also hold 400 acres of the core battlefield, which where Cornwallis, marching from this house, met American General Horatio Gates and defeated the Americans at the Battle of Camden in 1780. On those 400 acres, we are working with partners with South Carolina Battleground Trust and the American Battlefield Trust to highlight that battle and preserve the property that's there. They will be putting trails. We'll be partnering with them with doing trails in the next year. We will be opening that space to a much wider audience. So we are in the middle of doing enormous archaeology work, which has actually been being done in the Camden area since the mid-60s, 1960s. So we have an incredible background in artifacts that go from the indigenous people all the way through the Revolutionary War and Civil War for that matter. In addition to those ideas and the work we're doing just to preserve the area that we hold, we are also working with the Catawba Land Company here, Land Trust here in this area, and Clemson University to bring back the longleaf pine forest that was on that 400 acres. So part of our exhibiting, of course it's 400 years from now, part of our exhibiting is to present the environmental discussion of what that land looked like at the time of that battle, which was a longleaf pine forest. So we're excited to be a part of that natural environment and bringing back, or at least teaching some of the history of the ancient use of the property. The other things that we're doing on our property is we are actually working with the city and the county and the state of South Carolina, and they have built a $6 million facility, which will be a new Southern Campaign Revolutionary War museum for Camden that highlights the entire Southern Campaign in South Carolina. It is a process of the Liberty Trail and the American Battlefield Trust and the South Carolina Battlefield Trust. So it is a lot of collaborators working to bring Camden into a really exciting forefront. What that I think means for all of us in South Carolina is there's an enormous amount of excitement about being prepared for 2026 250th anniversary, and we're all going to be able to add to that discussion because so many battles happened in South Carolina, and quite a few of us think that South Carolina might have actually made Yorktown possible. So if you didn't already know that, we all want to learn more about that. And on our property here, in order to engage our colonial background, we are doing living history demonstrations. We've just started, and all of this has been going on during COVID. It kind of had started before, and then it kind of got, wait, but it actually has given us a chance to do a lot of these background facility needs that we had to do. So we have started the Joseph Kershaw Horticultural Trade Program, which is bringing back the mercantile business that was there. So we have a colonial garden these are all educational opportunities as well as living history demonstrations. We have a potter. Both of those helpers are actually local teachers. So they are setting it up as a great tool for the middle and elementary schools. We also have been working with the American College of Building Arts, which is housed in Charleston, but they have helped us start a brick making business. So as of next week or so, we've done a few bricks, had a little fun stomping in the mud and making a few bricks. In November, we will actually fire our first set of bricks from our new brickyard and doing it in the colonial manner. So we're really excited to show that off. It is also hopefully going to be a revenue generating stream as well. So we will sell our colonial bricks when we get to that point on our property as well as elsewhere. So we're excited to use them here and to show that colonial trade process, which was very impactful to why the British were here in the first place and the money they made and the taxes that they levied. All of those stories we're going to tell. There are learn more, to finish that video, so you only saw about half of that video. To finish that video, it is on our Facebook page. We have also several other videos on our artifacts. So we're trying to use those opportunities to get our story out during this time. We are open for tours, but just very quietly open. We also have started a blog, which we're excited about, gives kind of an overview of some of our future exhibit opportunities. We've had some really wonderful collaborators and funders who've come together with us to make sure that when we do reopen all the way, that we'll have some really high quality exhibits. The Visitor Center, which is the city and the county and the state's $6 million project, which is next door to us, opens April of 2021. And that's kind of what my job has been, to get us ready for that opening, because people will start coming and our excitement for the 250th will really start getting moving at that point. So I think I was going to open up mostly for questions at this point, because I haven't really told you everything about what's in this building. So I wasn't sure whether y'all wanted to, there were so many people, I thought we probably had more questions than we did. You just wanted to hear me talk. So if you didn't know about the South Carolina Liberty Trail, I would Google that, because it is a really exciting app that they're producing that is going to highlight all of the battlegrounds in South Carolina that were part of the Southern Campaign. There's a lot of, I think there's several sites in Charleston that are included in that. Anyone can add what information on that. There are, we are gonna, on November 7th, bring as many of those collaborators here on our property for our 50th anniversary celebration. The National Park Service is very much involved in this process, and they're at the same kind of position where you can't necessarily open right now. So we're all kind of trying to find ways to work together. And this the Liberty Trail story and how it impacts South Carolina now and in 1780, 1781 is exciting to be able to tell. So do I have any questions, comments, thought processes?
Anybody? I have a comment, and you actually said it before, just how exciting it is to really establish and let everybody outside of South Carolina know how much went on here during the Revolution. I know working in Charleston, people often come and think, oh, it's the Civil War, but then are often surprised to learn there's so much revolution here in Charleston, and then you know, everything you have going on in Camden. And then I grew up in Virginia. So of course, the center of the universe was Virginia during the Revolution. So it's just really exciting, all the different activities that you have planned. And it's also really exciting that Camden is a really versatile historic site, because you've got all that really early history, and then, you know, all the way up through the Civil War, and then beyond. So it looks like
I came from a paper primary source document background in which I love the written word, and I love the artifacts that are attached to that too. So that's kind of one of the exciting things, that because we have had so much research done here, so many artifacts to choose from and to consider and what they mean, that that it's so really exciting to come up with exhibits that talk about those various projects and what it means to the area and South Carolina. So you brought up, I'm sorry, I know I see there's another question, but I don't know if y'all can see this, but this is actually a long board that says the importance of South Carolina in the American Revolution. I'm not sure y'all can see it, but we start in 1780 with the Siege of Charleston, and you kind of see 1774, and this is South Carolina, but the battles in South Carolina till 1780, and then you have an enormous number of battles that go on until the Treaty of Paris in 1783. So that's kind of what we're all trying to invest. I'm sorry, I feel like that light is shining. I'm not sure it's doing so well. But I think this is it's an amazing opportunity that we have, that the Southern Campaign is so important to our the 2026 discussion for us. So I think every one of us has an opportunity to engage in this story for us.
Okay, we have a few questions from Teresa. In early Camden history, which specific Indian tribes were involved?
So DeSoto found the Cofetacheki, which ended up being mostly destroyed by the diseases that the Spanish brought. Or alternatively, which I'm not sure we 100% know, they were folded into the Catawba Nation, which is the nation that we consider today to be most of South Carolina area. In fact, some of them, there is still a Catawba Nation that holds property and has their headquarters in Rock Hill, which is their native land. They also owned some property possibly, and they were moved to Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania at one point, and they're working their way back. So I think the Cofetacheki were the first ones in our area, and whether the Catawba are also part of that or not is not really 100% sure.
Okay, and kind of along the same line, I think, also from Teresa, we read Casting Two Shadows by Anne Rinaldi, based on the Kershaw family. Are you familiar with it? And is it accurate?
It's a what?
Is it accurate?
So we are in the Kershaw house. So you're in the Joseph Kershaw house. I am afraid I'm not exactly familiar with that book so far. We have a lot of descendants here from the Kershaw family in Camden, including me. And I would say, unless it's if it is a nonfiction, I would say that there are probably some that's good and some that's not. So even some of the, we have to realize that. And I'll say I have not read that, so I can't tell you if it is completely correct. But it would be well worth whoever's doing the studying there to do some research. And I think a lot of it can be found online. A lot of the Kershaw papers are at Caroliniana and USC. What's the name of that one there? And then also UNC Chapel Hill has a lot of Kershaw papers, as well as the University of Minnesota. So one of the Kershaws went up there. A lot of those papers are online. So if there's areas of that you might want to try to research and do more of a nonfiction primary source discussion on it, I think that'd be really cool. Yeah. And let us know, send us a copy.
Okay, so I have a history question, and then I'm going to backtrack and do more of a facility question. But from Mary Agnes Seabrook, when I visited your center, I thought it was interesting that Camden was proposed to be the capital of South Carolina before Columbia was chosen, because the people of Camden didn't want to be the capital. They wanted to remain a smaller town.
Well, I think, and I don't have the actual documentation to say they said they didn't want to be. I think that actually Columbia had a lot of space, a lot more land that was free to for farmland. I think the Capitol is actually built on almost a huge piece of farmland for Columbia. And I know that was a big discussion. I thought Statesburg was also in there. Statesburg was also one of the sites they looked at. So they kind of ran across, I wouldn't say the fall line, but certainly the middle of what is now South Carolina. And I would tend to think that probably knowing the lay of the land, that Columbia would have been maybe the already flattest area.
Okay. So this is from John. The new facility, is it to be a newly built museum, or will it be placed in an already built building?
No, it's a brand new facility. It's 3 buildings actually, but the museum portion of it is and all buildings have a colonial look to them, but they're brand new, and they're they'll be done by the end of this year. Yeah, with the exhibit finalized and in place by April.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? I have a couple of things. In the video, he noted that Camden was identified as an inland, or was founded as an inland city, partly for protection. And in 1730, what was the group that they were most concerned about defending themselves from, would you say?
Yeah, again, I don't know if y'all can see anything like this at this point. So this is a map of those various townships that were developed to protect against the indigenous tribes, but also there was some French and Indian going on in the French and Indian War. So all of this was kind of built as a barrier. I believe the French are over here, you got your Spanish here, you got your French over there, and everybody's trying to get the native populations to choose them in the fight on a regular basis.
Okay.
And change sides.
Okay.
And this, if you can see, we've got the and it also was who was settled. So we have the French Huguenots settling Hillsborough, New Bordeaux, New Rochelle. We've got Londonderry, the Swiss immigrants settling there. So and Swiss immigrants in New Windsor, in Orangeburg. These are all Swiss immigrant, German Lutherans in Amelia, Scotch Irish from Pennsylvania and Virginia. So they actually kind of targeted groups of people to bring them to certain areas to protect the township. And we were Scotch Irish Quakers from Virginia that settled Camden.
Okay. Now I came across this when I was reading about the site. King, was he a Catawba?
King Hagar, yes.
Weatherbane?
Later, yep.
And I don't know if you want to tell the story about that, because I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, we just put it on our blog. I'd probably have to pull that up.
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to find
But he is considered the patron saint of Camden because he helped protect the early settlers and traded with Joseph Kershaw.
Okay.
And chose his side, or their side, the British side at that time, to help them against other Indian nations that were moving through. Again, it was a huge trading area for indigenous people. So there were a lot of people coming and going. And I think actually I've heard a story that Charleston was that way too in the very earliest days when it was a huge trading station. There were just a lot more people that would move through a trading station of various backgrounds.
Okay. Yeah, King Hagler. That was his name.
Hagler.
Hagler, sorry. I was going phonetically. King Hagler. I'd also like to say that for any of you, if you get a chance, definitely visit Historic Camden's website. It's really good, and there's a really good video describing the settlement and the history of the property. It has a lot of information, as well as the blog, which has some interesting topics in it too. So, all right. Any other questions, comments?
So while we're finishing up, and I did want to have everybody leave with one thought, that at the time of the Battle of Camden, there between the Gates Army and Cornwallis's army on that 400 or 500 acres of property, it is understood that there were 7,000 souls on that land at that time in 1780, in August of 1780. And that number is comparable to a city in colonial times. So it's an amazing thought that many movement of troops during that time frame, and it's a great study to consider how many people had to go to so many places, from so many places, not only from this house and where they came, how many British. They were really representatives of almost all 13 colonies at that battle. There were representatives from France, from Germany, from Africa. And it was, when we think about the Revolutionary War in the terms of the people that actually were there and why they were there, on which side they were there, and how their lives were impacted, and how our lives are impacted by their choice to be there. That's the stories that we're trying to tell here.
How much of the battlefield is, visible as a battlefield? I mean, you said it was longleaf pine forest when the battle was fought, and then the forest was cut down for planting later, or destroyed?
Yep, it was definitely had been planted from generation 2 or 3,
Yeah.
and now it's in a hardwood forest mostly. In fact, it had been planted for pine to be cut, so it was a pine farm. And we are slowly regenerating and taking out the areas. So we've cut the areas that we're going to show as part of the trail system. And we've identified and are working on the archaeology for how the battle actually ran. So where the movement of troops were and what happened in what spot, that's the archaeology we're confirming. And as we do that, we are also allowing that longleaf pine to come back. So almost all of the longleaf pine is gone. So our longleaf pine is, little. But the hope is that over the long years and years and 400 years of growth that a longleaf pine will do, that we will reinvest in that over generations.
Okay. Oh, here's the question. Why has Field Days been canceled?
So Field Days was not canceled. It was moved to another spot in the county, mostly due to, as the press release said, restrictions that would be on our property because we're a city property with the COVID requirements.
Okay. Any other questions?
From Alan.
Okay.
Thank you, Alan. So please come visit.
Yes. And I guess you can find out more information about or volunteering or how you can help on your website.
Yes, if you're local, I would love to have you come down to visit, yeah, and volunteer if you're in Camden. Yes.
Oh, here's another question. Do you have any information on the Cherokee Wars in the area?
No, I don't have any information on the Cherokee Wars in the area. I'll have to find that out.
Okay.
I haven't even heard that.
And here's another, here's a question. The placement of the towns look like a barrier to protect the low country to me. Why would that make sense?
So I would say yes, that the main town in that time frame, but probably one of the 4 largest in the whole of America was Charleston. So yes, they were protecting not only their the shipping, but they were also protecting the people in the plantation district. Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering. In the video, he said that you couldn't get to Charleston by water from Camden, but the water runs into the Santee. So would Camden had had a closer relationship with Georgetown than it did?
Most definitely. In fact, Kershaw's brother Eli had the mercantile business started in Charleston with Ankrum and Lukac. They sent Joseph Kershaw here. He was the trading partner that sent things to Charleston. His brother Eli had a place in Conway, and they traded that way, and then down to Georgetown. So yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
And then to me, the Great Wagon Road and the idea of the movement of peoples through that from Philadelphia down through Virginia into Georgia is really opens up that whole discussion of how people made it through that particular walk, which it was, and how wonderful that trade opportunity was, really all the way up to Virginia and Philadelphia.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
I was just looking up some information more about the Cherokee War, but it looks like most of it, I mean, 96 has, that's, you know, not crazy far from y'all, but obviously it's still up there, but most of it's an upstate, you know, battles.
And that's a great, I mean, the Cherokee Nation that had all that property for such a long time is an incredible story that should be, hopefully we'll do more and more learning on that too. Yeah. Is there anybody up here from 96 in the Greenville Dark Corners area? I don't know.
Yeah, what were the other 3 towns established along with Camden for protection? Would it have been?
Yeah, 96.
Oh, you may have already said it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there were more than 3. Yeah.
Okay. Here we have a question. As a recent visitor to the battleground, I was a bit disappointed by the lack of maps and other literature. Ray, the scope of the battlefield, will pathways be opened up and maps be provided and text be posted, just to give you an idea of the scope and breadth of the conflict?
Right, so yes, that's what we are so appreciative of the South Carolina Battleground Trust and the American Battlefield Trust, is they have a wonderful plan, and they've funded this wonderful plan, and they're getting ready to start their trail system, and they have done an enormous amount of work really over the last 5 or 6 years to get that space into a much more accessible, understandable space for hiking as well as learning the battle. A lot of that has been the archaeology work to verify that what we understood of the battle was actually the true, the way it was going to run. Again, that all is starting sometime before the end of the year, and hopefully will be accessible and done with the trail maps and the wayfinders by April 2021.
Okay. So here's another question. The location of the battlefield is located out of Camden. The Joseph Kershaw home is in Camden. Which came first, the Battle of Camden or Joseph Kershaw's settlement of Camden?
Joseph Kershaw came in the 1750s.
Okay. And then the house was burned and rebuilt. Okay.
Right, rebuilt in 1978, actually.
And it's the house in the Patriot, right?
It is considered the house in the Patriot, yes.
Right. Okay. The Cherokee War ended with the Treaty of DeWitt's Corner, but I'm not sure the modern location of that site today. Does it still exist? Further along this, okay, the Cherokee War ended in American victory and essentially pushed the British out of South Carolina until they came back and successfully besieged Charleston in 1781, later in the war. So Alan might look that one up too. Okay. Anything else? All right. Was Camden primarily a Quaker settlement? I know it has a large Quaker cemetery.
So yes, the earliest settlers in 1730 were Quakers, and their town was named Fredericksburg. And when Joseph Kershaw came and started the mercantile business, they all moved, everybody moved up towards the space here. Watery River tends to flood, and in fact, the various renditions of this town started on the river, moved back to in front of this house, which is what was in 1780. That town was directly in front of this house. Now it is 4 blocks up, further up the hill north.
Okay. Okay. And then it was called Pine Tree Hill, or
Pine Tree Hill was a middle just name of it, and then Kershaw had it changed to Camden for Lord Camden.
okay. From Chris Sergi at Andrew Low House to everyone. Thank you, Ginny. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Zemp. We really appreciate your time. This is great.
Well, thank y'all for taking a minute to come see us and do in person. I hope sometime soon we can all see each other in person. Thank y'all.